Thinking about buying new construction in Port St. Lucie, with all of these communities and neighborhoods popping up, it can feel very overwhelming on where to start. As someone that works with these neighborhoods every day, my goal in this video is to set realistic expectations and give you some insider tips so that your move to the area is as seamless as possible. So let's get started. Port St. Lucie has really been developing my entire life. And it's just recently, probably over the last 5 or 6 years, hit a whole new wave of growth. Take Tradition, for example, which is probably one of our most popular suburbs. It already has a solid foundation with its schools, parks, and shopping that it's built up over the past 2 decades. But recently, it's hit a whole second wave of new communities and commercial developments. Buyers really love that balance. There's already a solid base of amenities in the Tradition area, but there is so much more on the way, which makes it really exciting. And it's not just Tradition. St. Lucie West is constantly redeveloping and staying popular, as well as the Gatlin area. We've seen a massive commercial explosion over the last couple of years and going forward. And that's a great option for people that want brand new construction, but don't necessarily want to be in an HOA community, showing that we have options all throughout Port St. Lucie to fit whatever you are looking for. And with all this commercial development and future commercial developments happening, this will be able to keep up with the demand of PSL being now the 6th largest city in Florida. And now a lot of people that are moving here are very interested in the new construction homes. They don't really want the headaches or the renovation projects. And honestly, if you're clicking on this video, it's likely because you are most interested in new construction as well, rather than going into an older home or renovation project. There are a bunch more perks of new construction, which we're going to cover throughout this video. One, including lower homeowners insurance, which I know is big for a lot of buyers. And then also there's just a different type of energy when you are purchasing in a new construction community. It almost feels like the first day of school, where everyone's just a little bit more open to getting to know people because everyone is new to that community. It's not like it's an overly established community, which also creates a really fun energy for people moving to this area. And to add on to that, of course, there is the lifestyle of these communities. Tradition especially has a good variance in communities that fit people's certain needs. Whether you're someone that wants a very family-oriented community with a lot of kid-friendly activities, or you're wanting a quieter, more intimate neighborhood, or for the 55 and older communities, if you want a very highly active 55 and older community with a lot of amenities, or you want a more boutique resort style, or even a balance between the two, we have all of that. And then of course we have our golf communities as well, which is a huge draw for this area. So really showing that Tradition and Port St. Lucie has a community for everyone. And that's also where I come into play to help you narrow down your search and find the right community that fits your needs. Now, when we talk about new construction in Port St. Lucie, there's really going to be 2 types of new builds to consider. First being your to-be-built homes. And this is pretty much your standard, what you think of when you're building a new construction home. This is from scratch, from the ground up. This is when you get input on the lot, floor plan, structural options, the design options, fixtures, really everything within the builder's guidelines. This is where you get your most customization. The big trade-off with to-be-built homes is obviously the time. For the HOA communities of the Tradition and Port St. Lucie area, you're looking at about 7 to 10 months. And if you're building on a residential lot, building a custom home, you're looking closer to 12 to 14 months. And the other type of new construction you'll find in Port St. Lucie are inventory homes, move-in ready homes, spec homes, whatever you want to call them. They're all the same. And these are homes where the builder builds these brand new homes. They select everything, and you are essentially just touring them and purchasing them as if it was a resale home, except obviously it's brand new. Now, you don't get to select anything for the homes unless for some occasions where the home is still early on in the building process, you may be able to have input on the design options. Outside of that, the homes are going to be essentially move-in ready. I advise people to still tour the inventory homes even if you are leaning for the to be built, and that's for 2 reasons. One, to help give a more realistic expectation of what the price in that community looks like, to kind of see like what does $900,000 get you in Astor Creek, for example. So things like that, where you want to see the finishes, the layout, the lot, and kind of just set expectations. So before you go under contract or for a new build, you have a good idea on what your budget is going to get you in that community. And also you may end up finding one that's close enough to what you were going to build anyway. I've seen this happen multiple times with buyers where we go there with the expectation to build, and they have an inventory home that checks a lot of the boxes as far as kitchen, flooring, floor plan, location, and they ended up going with the inventory home route. So it's just something to keep your open mind to. And obviously it saves you time as well. If it's close enough to what you want, you get a little bit more flexibility in the pricing, and you get a home today instead of having to wait a year, it's always just a good option to keep in mind. One thing you'll notice about pretty much every builder in Port St. Lucie is that they're all typically going to offer some type of incentives. Now, while the details of these incentives change month to month, the types of incentives have stayed pretty consistent over the last couple of years. For example, Coulter Homes typically likes to give designer credits for their incentive. Astor Creek right now is also, in addition, giving the $50,000 golf initiation fee included with the purchase of a home. Then you have communities like Belterra and Seville, where they're currently doing the free pool incentive. Then you have Telaro, which has multiple builders as well, so their incentives vary greatly. I've seen some with free pools, and I've also seen some builders include the golf initiation fee in the build of their home as well. And for the other builders of the area, they typically stick with either closing cost assistance, rate buy downs, or flex cash, where you get to use the money how you seem fit, whether it's towards design, just taking it off the home price, rate buy down, or closing costs, things like that. The key is that the incentives that you see today are not necessarily the incentives you're going to see in 3 months. So just make sure to keep up to date on the incentives if you are in the market for buying a new construction home. And it's worth mentioning, if you are paying cash, you will absolutely get the incentives. If you are looking to use a loan to purchase your new build home, the builder will require you to use the in-house lender because they are tied to the incentives, as well as you'll have to use the in-house title company as well in order to get the incentive package. Builders will also sweeten the pot on inventory homes. I've seen builders offer appliance packages, upgraded landscaping, furnished credits, or even fully furnished homes in addition to some type of flex cash or closing cost assistance. And that's why I'm always reminding buyers that you are going to get some type of incentive. It just comes down to knowing what the current incentive is that is being offered in that community. And a tip that I have found to work is if you are trying to get a little bit more of incentive from the builders, make sure to not try negotiating until you are 100% ready to deposit that day at that community. You have already made up your decision that you know you are going to purchase a home in that community. This is when, before you are going to sign the contract, make the deposit, this is your chance to try and get a little bit more incentive, because builders are usually motivated to give you their best offer, but it typically comes with some type of time constraint where it's, we'll give you X, Y, and Z if you sign the contract before leaving, or they'll give you the weekend, or if it's towards the end of the month and they want you to go under contract before the end of the month, things like that. It's not a guarantee to get extra incentives, but it has worked with some of my buyers in the past. So to give yourself the best opportunity to maybe get a little bit extra incentives, just make sure to wait until we are 100% decided and ready to move forward. One thing I really want you to know about when it comes to new construction in Port St. Lucie is that pretty much every builder you're going to see in every community does not include the lot price in the price you are seeing online. So I know that can sometimes create some false expectations when you're browsing through the websites. Now, there are some exceptions in communities where they may have certain lots that don't have a premium, but for the most part, there will be a premium on top of the base price. The good news is there is a wide range of lot pricings in these communities, so we'll absolutely be able to find you the right lot in the right budget. Here's how I break things down when I think about new construction. There are really 4 buckets to keep in mind. You have the base price, the structural options, the lot premium, and finally the design studio. Now, if you are really able to nail down the first 3 buckets before getting into the design, you'll have a really good handle on what the total cost and budget is for this home. Now, the lot premiums do depend on the community. For example, our golf communities are going to have the highest ceilings. So your Astor Creek and Telaro, the most expensive lots I've seen in those communities, can get up to around the $400,000 range. While they still have plenty of options that are in the $20,000 to $200,000 range, it's still worth mentioning that's kind of the ceiling for the area. And then for the other communities like your Seville, Cadence, Belterra, Verano, Riverland, you can typically find a nice waterfront lot for around $100,000 or even as low as $60,000. It just depends on the community, but there is a wide range of lot pricings throughout all of the Port St. Lucie area and all of these communities. At the end of the day, selecting your lot is a balancing act between preference, location, and budget. This is one of the parts that is directly in your control, so there's no surprises here, and we'll work together to find you the right lot with keeping the overall cost of the build in mind. Once you've got your base price, structural options, and lot premium figured out, now it's time to move on to that 4th bucket, the design center. And this is the part of the building process where most buyers do get caught off guard. That's because this is the part of the process where builders give us the least amount of information, unfortunately, and my goal here is to help set expectations so that we can go into this build with a plan. The base price does include standard features, which which we'll always get the standard features list so we can start prioritizing what items we know we want to change before we even get to the design center. Some builders are more package based, where you select a package that covers your flooring, countertops, cabinets, things like that. And then you'll also have other builders that are a little bit more customizable, and that's where you select each individual item from a larger catalog. When you're in these more customizable neighborhoods, whether it's Tesoro, Astor Creek, Verano, these tend to have the higher design spends, where you're typically in that 25% to even 35% of the base price. And Riverland is another community that I've seen people spend a lot as well if they want to go crazy with the upgrades. You can go crazy in essentially any community, just to be transparent, but I'm kind of just using the averages of what I've seen when working in these communities. And we also have a community like Belterra, where they offer a lot of higher end finishes in their standard packages, so people don't spend as much in design at Belterra. You typically see about 10 to 15% of the base price when building in Belterra. And for the other communities of the area, I typically tell people the rule of thumb is 20% of the base price, or even up to 25%, just to give you a more conservative estimate for your total build cost. Most of the design spend that I've seen comes in at the flooring, countertops, and cabinets. So if you're able to lock those three in and get a good sense of those three, you'll be pretty comfortable with the rest of your design budget, where you're able to make substitutions and changes and even do some after closing if you decide that you don't want to overspend on the other options. All of the builders have their design studios, where you will work hand in hand with a design studio expert, and these design associates are amazing to work with. They're really good at keeping you within your budget and helping you pick items that work well with each other. So if you're someone that wants to stick to a budget, once you handle those first three, like I mentioned, the design associate will be able to help give you alternatives and options for the rest of your design choices to keep you within the budget that you want to be in. And the design appointments are typically a couple of days, where you make your selections and then also have a day to review, so that you make sure that everything is just as you want it. As I mentioned, this is the part of the process where buyers get surprised the most in the building process, and that is because the design center appointments and your selections are obviously happening once you are already under contract, made your deposits, and there are no contingencies. So when you are going under contract, you may not have a firm exact cost of what this home is going to be. I understand this can be scary, putting down these deposits with that unknown variable of the design center. And that's why I'm collecting as much data as I can to help you set expectations for your new build. As I said, more custom communities, you're looking at about 25 to 35%. Rule of thumb would be 20 to 25%. And if you're in Belterra, you're looking at likely around 10 to 15%. So I hope that this gives you a clear expectations with getting your total cost in mind before we even go under contract. Now that we've covered the pricing of the build itself, it's now time to cover some of the ongoing costs that you'll have once you move into your brand new home. This will be things like HOA, CDDs, property taxes, and homeowners insurance. Starting with the HOAs, these can vary greatly between the communities. For example, Central Park, which has multiple builders, their HOA can be found under $100 a month. When you look at the other communities in Tradition, those typically range from anywhere in the $350 to $550 range. And then your more golf communities like Astor Creek, you're looking closer to $650 per month, and even Tesoro can get as high as $900 per month. While most of the communities vary in their HOA monthly fee costs, a lot of them have very similar features. You're likely going to have full lawn care and irrigation, Wi-Fi, cable, security monitoring, common areas, and obviously the amenities of the community. And in addition to the HOAs of these communities, you'll also have a CDD, which is a community development district. And this is essentially the community took out a loan to build the infrastructure and amenities of these new construction communities and have it on a 30-year loan, and the residents of the communities pay this off over time. There are a few communities that don't have CDDs, and this would be Tesoro and Riverland, but for the most part, you'll see a CDD in the area where it's paid in your property taxes, and these can range. Most of the communities are anywhere in that $600 to $1,500 range, while you do have a few that are above $2,000 a year, and this would be your Astor Creek, Verano, and surprisingly enough, Central Park has about a $2,200 CDD, even though they have a much lower HOA. So it's just another fee to be aware of, and make sure that you know going into these communities what the CDD, what the HOA costs are, which obviously I would supply you with all of that information as we are touring these communities. And then another fee that people constantly bring up about Port St. Lucie is the high property taxes. Now, Now, from my experience, most of the people that I've worked with are actually coming from high property tax areas anyway, so it's not as much of a surprise, but it is still worth covering here just so that you are aware what you are getting into moving to Port St. Lucie. A typical rule of thumb that I give people is to expect $2,000 of property taxes per $100,000 spent on the home. So that means if you are buying a $500,000 new construction house in Port St. Lucie, to expect about $10,000 in property taxes. Now that can always be lower whether you're using your homestead exemption or even portability if you're moving within Florida, but it's just something I like to use as a rule of thumb to help set expectations. And something that I've seen actually make up for the higher property taxes of the area is just how low homeowners insurance is on these new builds in Port St. Lucie. Since we are so west of any flood zones, it also just helps with making it really affordable. For example, $1 million brand new home in Port St. Lucie, your homeowner's insurance is likely going to be under $2,500 a year, which means if you're in the $500,000 range, that's about half that. So you're expecting around $1,200 to $1,300 in homeowners insurance. And I've seen owners that actually add flood insurance, even though we're so inland, because it's so affordable. So it's great to have these extra options to get more coverage and still have a affordable homeowners insurance policy. So hopefully you find value in that it kind of balances out the higher property taxes of the area. Now, one of the biggest questions I typically get asked about new construction is what the process looks like and how long these builds take. As I mentioned earlier, if you're building in a new construction community, like an HOA community, those can typically range anywhere for as fast as 7 months to as long as around 10 months. And if you're building on a vacant lot, a more custom build, those are typically 12 to 14 months. And along the way, you're going to have certain checkpoints. You're going to do your design center appointment typically about 6 weeks after going under contract. And then as the home is getting built, we have a pre-drywall inspection where we get to walk around, check the electrical and the flow of the home to make sure that everything is in order. Then once the home is finished, we have the initial walkthrough, which is where we create a punch list for everything that is supposed to get fixed before closing. And then you will also have the final walkthrough the day of closing, just to make sure everything was fixed. And if you are an out-of-state buyer that isn't able to make it to any of the inspections or walkthroughs, I am actually able to do those for you, and I can even set up a Zoom call where you are there virtually to help you also be a part of that process. I would also advise getting a third-party inspection before the closing, but also speak with the inspector and make sure that they will come back after closing for free, because most of them will, because there are certain restrictions with the roof and the property that they're not able to do due to the builder restrictions before closing. But for the most part, most inspectors will do a thorough inspection for everything that they can do, and then also come back for free of charge after closing to check the larger items. This way, you're able to get a lot of the items fixed before closing, and everything is covered under warranty for at least the first year structurally. You'll be able to get any other findings fixed after closing as well. So once you've decided that new construction is for you in Port St. Lucie, the biggest mistake you can make is walking into the models without representation. Remember, these sales associates work for the builder, not for you. That's where I come in. As your local realtor, I'm able to walk you through the processes based on my experiences with these communities. I'm here to help you navigate the contracts, incentives, timelines, design, and to give you unbiased comparisons and thoughts between these communities, because again, I work for you, not the builder. And it's important to note that the builder will always pay my commission, and this does not change your incentives at all. So essentially, you're getting expert representation at no cost to you, and it ensures that you have someone by your side every step of the way for your new build. And on top of that, I've built strong relationships with a sales associate at each community that I really enjoy working with, and they always give me their best effort because they like that I'm constantly bringing them buyers. So you're not only getting my expertise, you're also getting their best effort as well, which is a win-win. So if you're in the process of planning your visit to Port St. Lucie to tour these communities, I would love to be your local realtor of choice. So you can scan the QR code on screen and click the contact page to get started. And if you'd like my new construction guide, you'll also find that on the QR code as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you next time.